A month is exactly how long it has been since she was in the mood to do anything with me. In fact, for the last 3 months, especially the last one, she's been a bit of a bitch. So when she woke me up this morning with her caresses, I was surprised, to say the least. We just had an argument last night. She came home late from work and demanded that I come into the bedroom and have sex with her. After such treatment from her, I said, "Fuck you. With such an attitude, you won't get anything." She snapped back. She then went upstairs to take a shower. She was there within 30 minutes. I'm sure the water heater ran out of hot water before it finished. Lately, I've been tired of her behavior. She always had a short temper and could hold a grudge for days. She was, after all, fully Irish. Catherine O'Brien was her maiden name. And now she is Catherine McCarthy. Not Kate or Katie, just Catherine. My name is Kurt McCarthy. I'm her husband. Yes, I'm Irish too. We've been together since school. We started dating when we were 18 years old. I learned early on to move out of the way when she started her tirades. This has been the case for the last 26 years, 22 of which we have been husband and wife. Even with her temper, I still loved her. Red hair, green eyes, fair skin with freckles, I liked it all. We were each other's first boyfriend and girlfriend. In fact, we kissed for the first time. When we started dating, we talked about what we were comfortable doing sexually. She said, "On my wedding day, I will be a virgin." I respected that, but it didn't stop us from fooling around. In fact, 4 years before the wedding, I perfected my skills in giving her pleasure. I knew what she liked, when and how often. I really liked it too. So today, when she woke me up with her caresses, I knew exactly what she wanted. This was sort of our usual procedure. Today, like many times before, she said, "I like the way you do it," when I gave her pleasure. However, this time, something was different. I wake up, "I'm going to jump into the shower." I knew that if I didn't do it first, it would be an hour before I could get to the bathroom. In response, she just moaned in agreement. As I let the water stream over my body, I kept thinking about what she said. She had said these words hundreds of times before. Why are they bothering me now? I'm sure part of this was due to the fact that our relationship had been strained over the past few months. I didn't even know why. I just knew how to stay away from her when she was in that mood. Usually, they lasted no more than a week, a maximum of 10 days. This lasted a whole month, which was unprecedented. "I like how you do it," she said. Why does this bother me so much? After finishing my shower, I wrapped a towel around myself as I walked into the bedroom. "Hey, sleepyhead, now it's your turn." She groaned, but stood up and headed to the bathroom. 5 minutes later, she was in the shower, soaping herself up. I liked looking at her. Her red hair, now wet, flowed below her shoulders, her perfect B-cup breasts, her small waist and cute ass. It reminded me of the hot sex we had every day. In the first year of our marriage, we couldn't get enough of each other. Before work, after work, and sometimes during lunch, if we could get away. This was when I was working as a mechanic and she was working at Target. Those were the days. We were poor but completely in love and lust for each other. Until about 8 years ago, I continued to work as a mechanic. That's when the owner of the local Napa franchise asked me to come work for him. He addressed my desire to do something different with my life. I was making about $40,000 a year turning wrenches. We talked many times, either when I went to pick up parts or when he delivered them to our store. At that time, he had 2 stores, he wanted to open a third, and he needed a manager. He felt that I was coming. Of course, I knew about cars and parts. I was ASE certified, and he liked the way I interacted with clients. One evening after work, he invited me to dinner to discuss opportunities. I thought he just needed a manager. In fact, he wanted to talk about a business opportunity that could set Catherine and I up for life. He asked me if I had ever thought about running my own business. Well, of course, I thought about it, and I understand that most people, at some point in their lives, also thought about it. I won't bore you with the details, but the gist was this. I would work for him, earning the same $40,000 a year for 10 years, and at the end of that period, he would sell me the business. During this time, he will put $20,000 a year into an account for me so that I can use it as a down payment on the purchase of the franchise. In addition, during this time, he prepared me to manage a business. I've always been a trusting person, and the handshake sealed the deal. I gave him 2 weeks' notice and then started working for him. At that time, I liked it because my 12-year-old son and 10-year-old daughter became actively involved in sports. This would allow me to have a flexible schedule to attend most of their games. However, this meant that I would work evenings and weekends. That night when I talked to Catherine about accepting the new job, she was furious that I didn't talk to her first. I didn't even have a chance to talk to her about future franchise opportunities because I knew she would be furious that I didn't get anything in writing. I told her that I missed my children's childhood and that this job would give me a chance to be a bigger part of their lives, then told her that, in the long run, it would be good for all of us. She didn't want to listen to anything, and I was on her crap list for over a week. I really hoped that nothing would go wrong with my plan. I didn't want to experience Catherine's wrath. I've experienced this many times, on camping trips, at birthday parties, and on vacations. Now, 8 years later, I was looking forward to surprising her in just 2 years. Of course, the lack of salary increases for the past 8 years has led to some heated discussions between us. I simply told her to trust me, which, unfortunately, was not easy for her. My work schedule changed from 7:30, 5 days a week as a mechanic, to any time between 9 hours, 7 hours during the week, and possibly some weekends. However, I had a flexible schedule that allowed me to see my children play baseball, softball, and soccer. About 2 years ago, I began to notice changes in Catherine. She became more easily irritated, and her usual short temper became even more violent. She also began, sometimes, to belittle me. This can certainly hurt a man's ego and cause resentment. Over the past 3 months, the situation has been getting worse and worse. I tried to talk to her about it. At first, it had an effect. She apologized, and the situation improved for about a week. Then, it all started again. However, lately, when I told her about something, she looked at me with irritation, and her attitude became even worse. Obviously, this affected our home life, not to mention our sex life. It got to the point where I would rather be at work building a business than at home with her. On the other hand, business is growing. We now have 4 locations, and our commercial business is constantly growing. My wife has always worked. She, of course, took some time off when the children were born, but soon returned to work. It didn't take her long to find a job with a group of insurance agencies. They have 4 offices around the city, and she is currently the office manager of one of them. As far as I can tell, she's doing a great job. I know from experience that managing people can be stressful at times, so I have to believe that part of my wife's attitude is due to that stress. I've asked her what has changed in the last 2 years, but she doesn't have an answer and gets angry when I mind my own business too much. As I got dressed to do some housework, my thoughts went back to the great morning sex. I smiled, remembering, but something still bothered me deep down. I like how you do it. For the rest of the weekend and into next week, everything will be back to normal. The new normal, that is. Catherine has been irritable all week. On Friday evening, she returned home a little late again, and everything repeated itself as on the previous Friday. In fact, she was even more demanding that I fulfill my professional duties in the bedroom. I've already mentioned that she's Irish, but so am I, and although I don't have that hot temperament, I still have one. Her attitude and demands infuriated me. When she said, "I need you to serve me," my answer was, "I don't jump on your command. You can take care of yourself." I wasn't going to be her lapdog. That night, I slept in my son Kevin's room. He rented an apartment about 6 months ago, so his room was free. When I walked into our bedroom this morning to get some clothes, Catherine was in the shower. I heard her phone notify that she had received a message. I don't know if you call it karma, fate, the hand of God, chance, or Irish luck, but when Verizon made an update a couple of years ago, it changed the SMS feature on our phones. You no longer need to unlock your phone to read text messages. New messages appear, and to read them, you just need to click on the message icon. That day, This update changed my life forever. I picked up the phone and saw a message from KB that read, "Well, did he do it?" Who is KB? What did he mean by this message? Was it really me who should have done something? I thought. It looks like it. She didn't do anything last night after the fight. In fact, I don't think she received any calls. What should I have done? Then it dawned on me. I like how you do it. She said it differently than the previous times. She said it in a way that emphasized the word you, as if she was comparing me to someone else. The problem is that she has no one to compare with. The fact that for 2 Fridays in a row she had practically demanded that I please her led me to the conclusion that she had a reason why she wanted me to do this. I guess she wanted me to feel him in her. Just thinking about it made my stomach churn. I ran to the bathroom, opened the toilet seat, and threw up. "Are you okay, honey?" asked Catherine. I turned and looked at her in the shower. Her wet hair looked sticky and stuck to her head. Her breasts sagged and dripped onto her stomach. I had to look away as I erupted into the toilet again. When she got out of the shower, she wrapped a towel around herself and stood next to me. "I'm probably getting sick," I told her. I needed time to think about everything. I didn't want to blame her and then suffer the wrath if I was wrong. "Do you think it was something you ate?" "Perhaps," I replied, feeling terrible again. "I just don't know what or when." I stood up. She went to touch my head, but I retreated. "You better not come near me. I don't want you to get infected with something." Then he turned and went back to the bedroom and said, "I'll go to the store and buy something for my stomach." And he left before she had time to get dressed. I drove and thought about the last few months, and even the last 2 years. She was supposed to be having an affair. For how long? I thought. My high school sweetheart, my wife, my love, no longer belonged only to me, or maybe not at all. I had to know for sure. I had to have proof. I didn't have a password for her phone or for my computer either. We always trusted each other and our privacy. How could I get evidence? Somehow I had to figure it out. I drove around the area, but I couldn't stay away for too long or she would start to worry. "You will need to return home with Pepto-Bismol, Dayquil, and NyQuil in hand." After going to the grocery store, I headed home. I would pretend to be sick and spend the day in Kevin's room. Upon returning home, I immediately went to the bathroom, took a shot of Pepto and a small dose of NyQuil, and then immediately went to my son's room. Catherine came in a minute later. "Are you feeling better?" I didn't want to talk to her, so I muttered something unintelligible, undressed, and climbed back into bed. I shuddered when she touched my forehead. "You're not hot." "Oh, I was hot. How could she do this to us?" "I'll make you chicken noodle soup," she said. "No, he'll just vomit back. I don't want her to do anything for me. I didn't trust her. For all I knew, she might try to poison me. I'm just going to go back to sleep. I think after a good night's sleep, I'll feel better." "Okay, I'll check on you in a little while," she said as she left. Of course I wasn't going to sleep. My mind was racing, replaying our entire life together, meeting, wedding, having children, vacations, Kevin's graduation, and soon Caitlin's. I could see nothing in all these memories that could explain what I suspected. Of course, the last 2 years had been stressful, but I didn't know why. I needed to find out what had changed. While I was lying there, I began to develop a plan. I needed proof. Once I have proof, I will know that our marriage is over. Again, I'm Irish. We have a short temper and hold grudges. Forgiveness is not usually our style. Look at the conflict between the Irish and the English. How long has it been going on? If, in fact, she cheated on me, I will never be able to forget and I will never forgive, especially if what she tried to make me do was true. Such disrespect as trying to force a husband to clean up after his lover was unforgivable. Somehow I needed proof, and somehow I had to know when to get it. When you live with someone as long as we have, you know them probably better than they know themselves. All this extensive knowledge would greatly help me in the coming days and weeks. But even with all this knowledge, it was Irish luck that gave me the information I needed. I needed to go to the bathroom, so I got up and headed to the master bathroom. Catherine was in the kitchen, but her phone was on the nightstand. I picked it up and there was another message from KB. It read, "I made a reservation for Wednesday afternoon." What reservation? I thought. The thought of booking a hotel immediately arose in my head. Usually you don't need to make a restaurant reservation for the afternoon. For dinner or even lunch, you may need a reservation, but not in the afternoon. Where? Was there a question? I guess it didn't matter. I could take Wednesday afternoon off and follow her. Again, another benefit of being a manager and having flexible hours. Avoiding too much time around Catherine for the next 4 days wasn't as difficult as you might think. Thanks to my pretending to be sick on Saturday and Sunday and my schedule on Monday and Tuesday, I only had minimal contact with her. True, I had to sleep in the same bed with her on Monday and Tuesday. I didn't want her to become suspicious. Of course, there was no sexual contact. I could barely stand to get into bed with her, let alone touch her. It's amazing how you can love someone one day and hate that person the next. So, on Wednesday, I took my lunch break from work and went to her work. On the way, I stopped at Wendy's and got something to eat, but my stomach was in knots, so most of the food went uneaten. I parked on the side street next to her building. I could still see the parking lot, but I was far enough from the road that unless she was looking for me, she wouldn't see me. After about an hour and a half, I began to doubt what I suspected. Was it just an innocent message? Was it purely work-related? I should have known. Other messages I saw still made me believe I wasn't wrong. I decided to sit there for the rest of the day if I had to. At about 2:30, I saw her boss walk out to his car and drive away alone. Now I was really doubting myself. Was I a paranoid fool? I kept thinking about the messages and how she had been acting, especially lately. There had to be something there. 15 minutes passed before I saw my wife leave the office. That's it. Will her meeting with the boss be innocent or not? I followed her as she left. She must not have noticed that I was watching her from afar because she drove straight to the motel and parked next to her boss's car. This was not a hotel with conference rooms. It was a motel, the kind where all the rooms face the central parking lot. Parked on the street again, mostly out of sight. She fiddled around in the car before getting out to go to her room. When she got out of the car, I noticed, even from a distance, that she was no longer wearing a bra. She probably took off her panties, too. She walked to one of the rooms, and just as she reached the door, it opened. Carl stood there in his underpants, greeting her. I took pictures with my phone until he closed the door. What I suspected turned out to be true. She will pay for this. As I said, when you live with someone for as long as we have been together, you know them, maybe even better than they do. I knew what I had to do to make the most of it. I'm Irish, as I said, so I have a short temper, and I use it to get revenge. I will take revenge on both of them. I left in a rage. I drove straight home. Caitlin was at softball practice, so I had time to do what I needed to do. We have a house on the outskirts of the city. We bought it because it had enough space for me to build a 2-car working garage with a finished room upstairs. This was my man cave. I installed a lift so I could work on our cars and make some money working on other people's cars. This garage was my refuge from the stress of the day, as well as from the hysterics that Catherine periodically threw. I even had a single bed upstairs when I was in the doghouse. Actually, that's exactly what I called my garage. Doghouse. When I got home, I immediately went to our bedroom and emptied all my clothes from the dresser and closet. She won't notice their absence because I'm sure she'll try that shit with me again, demanding that I come into the bedroom to service her. I knew she wanted to disrespect me by making me clean up after her lover. After taking my clothes and toiletries to the man cave, I returned to the house to await the arrival of my loving wife. It was 5:30 when she walked through the door. At least she put her bra back on, but I didn't know about panties. I was watching TV, deliberately ignoring her, when she asked, "Caitlin at home?" "No," I answered. She probably went to eat with friends from the team. Caitlin was a good kid. It was her senior year. We didn't worry when she didn't come home right after training. She'll probably text one of us soon to let us know where she is and when she'll be home. Oh, she said in that drawing, I have an idea tone that women use when they want something from their husband. I didn't look at her. Of course, he knew what she was thinking, but he wanted her to work on it. So, we have a free apartment. What would you like to do? She asked temptingly. We could put a couple of steaks on the grill and make a couple of salads, I said, still pretending to be engrossed in the TV program. I can think of more delicious things to eat, she continued. Well, if you want to order takeout, go ahead. Let me know where and when everything is ready, and I'll go get it, I said indifferently. I'll tell you where and when, she answered. In our bedroom, in about a minute. Looking up at her, I feigned slight confusion. Let's go up to our bedroom and enjoy a roll in the hay, she said in a sexy voice. I took the bait and ran up the stairs after her. She went into the bathroom and undressed, probably cleaning herself up a bit. You shouldn't make it too obvious, right? I stretched out naked on the bed. I had to work hard to force myself to tense up. When she came out of the bathroom, I saw her as she had become. A 42-year-old woman. To keep myself going, I closed my eyes and thought about young girls in adult films. She climbed onto the bed and began to please me. It was hard for me not to think that just a few hours ago, she was doing this to her lover. After about 15 minutes of thinking about adult movies, I finally reached my goal. As I expected, she said, "Serve me, baby?" Her eyes were closed as she waited in anticipation. Getting out of bed, I opened the drawer of the nightstand. Hearing the sound of a drawer being opened, she opened her eyes and looked at me. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Aren't you going to use your experience to make me relax?" I took a condom out of the drawer and opened the package. "I don't want to." "What the hell?" she asked. "What are you doing?" "I'm putting on protection," I said calmly. "What?" "Now my revenge has come. I don't know where or who you were with, so I'm taking precautions." I saw the blood rise in her face like mercury in a thermometer. She was ready to explode. "What are you accusing me of?" she screamed. "You know perfectly well what you did." "We both know," I said, with a matter-of-fact expression on my face. She exploded. "You're a damn asshole! How dare you stand here and accuse me of anything? Who are you? A manager at an auto parts store? A weakling who has been working the same job for the last 8 years, not even wanting to ask for a pay rise?" Now she was on edge. This was the real reason for what she did. She didn't respect me. My love, devotion, and sacrifice for her and our children were not enough. I put my clothes back on while she continued to scream and humiliate me. Then I left. I went to the dog house and went up to the man cave, closing the door behind me. About 2 minutes later, she was downstairs in the garage, screaming for me to come down and meet her like a real man. I knew what I did would piss her off, so I called the police. I had never called the police on my wife before, even though she had been violent towards me on multiple occasions. So I decided to use this to my advantage. If I time it right, I'll be in the yard when the cops show up to witness her rampage. She raged and raged on the stairs in the garage, demanding that I come down. There was no regret or remorse for what she had done. She was just angry that I humiliated her by calling her a slut. After a couple of minutes, when I didn't come down, she came over, tried the doorknob, and then started banging on the door, shouting obscenities at me. After about 5 minutes of tirade, she walked away from the door, then everything went quiet. I figured she had gone into the house to get a spare key. I knew she would come back, so I pushed the bed in front of the door. Then I smelled some unusual smell. What did she do? Moving the bed away from the door, I unlocked it and looked down into the garage. I didn't see her, but instead saw my workshop on fire, an empty gas cylinder lying on its side on the floor. The flames spread quickly and I shouted, "What the hell are you doing?" There was no answer. She was already on the street. Running to the window in the upstairs room, I saw her standing there with a smile on her face. Opening the window, I went down to the small roof above the garage door. After standing there for a few seconds, I looked at the ground 4.5 meters below me. I heard the fire burning in the garage. As I jumped, I hit the gravel and fell on my hands and knees, twisting my ankle in the process. As I crawled away from the burning building, she ran up to me and started beating me, shouting insults. I was trying to run away from her while she was beating me, when the police arrived and got out of the car. Then he heard one of them call the fire truck, and the other grabbed Catherine, subdued her, and handcuffed her. Even though the police were subduing her, she still screamed, "Get it, you asshole! Your precious dog's house is burning!" The cop put her in the back seat of the patrol car and walked over to me, trying to figure out what was going on. I told him decent versions of events of the evening from the moment I got home until they showed up. They took us both to the police station and I gave my statement. She was arrested for domestic violence and arson with possible attempted murder. I asked the policeman if I could get a restraining order against her, and he said, "You'd better talk to a lawyer." I called my lawyer on my cell phone and explained the problem. He primarily practiced business law, but referred me to a criminal defense attorney at his firm. The next day, I had a restraining order. She could not come within 150 meters of our home, the business where I work, or myself. She was still in jail and would remain there, pending her arraignment hearing. Everything turned out even better than I planned. Irish luck was shining, at least for me. That evening, I had to tell Kevin and Caitlin what happened. Caitlin was not surprised by her mother's action. She had seen examples of Catherine's anger all her life. I apologized to her and she hugged me. Kevin was furious. It would take him a while, but he would get through it. My children were everything to me. This only confirmed my decision to take a job that would allow me to be a more meaningful part of their lives. The next day, I went to another lawyer in the firm and asked him to prepare a petition for divorce. When he returned home, he found a police car in his driveway. Catherine was allowed to take clothes and other necessary items from home while under supervision. I read out the order, turned around, and left. She apparently posted bail, probably from her lover. This weekend passed peacefully as I cleared out the rubble that was my doghouse. I was able to salvage a lot of metal tools, but all my diagnostic equipment was broken. I called my insurance agent, but he couldn't tell me if it would be covered or not, since my wife also had title to the garage and its contents. That would be a fight for another day. I was reconsidering our life together. She was my first and only love. I was her first, but obviously not her only one. How could I continue to live? It was clear that I could not continue living with her. Trust was very important to me, and I could not forgive and forget. It's not in my nature, as I said. I hold a grudge. That would be the ultimate insult. However, I had to find out why. I needed this for my sanity. Was Carl the first? What led to this? Was it something I did or didn't do? Judging by the way she yelled at me, she didn't respect me. Was it caused by their conversations? Did he also insult me, belittle me? Was he downplaying my role as a Napa parts store manager? I needed to know more about Carl Benson. I turned to the internet to do as much research as possible. It's amazing what you can learn about a person. I found out that he was hired by the owner of my wife's business about 2 years ago as the general manager overseeing the business in all 4 locations. This was done so that the owner could retire and try to enjoy his golden years. I don't think it was a coincidence that around this time, my wife began to behave differently. It made me wonder how long this had been going on. Carl was single, divorced, and had 3 children between the ages of 15 and 20. They lived about an hour's drive from us. I'll have to do more research on this situation. In the meantime, however, I was going to contact the owner of the company. We met at many company events, and what's more, he started servicing his cars in the workshop where I worked. I was on good terms with him and was sure that I could get his phone number from my previous boss. I wanted to call him and tell him what was happening. This had to be on my to-do list for Monday. On Sunday evening, Catherine finally called me and she was very apologetic. "Oh, Kurt, I'm so sorry I lost my mind and set your garage on fire." "So what?" I said. "So can I go home?" she asked. "No. I have a restraining order against you." Yes, they told me about this when they paid bail for me. Who paid your bail? Mom and Dad, they are unhappy. Well, I too. Can we sit down and talk about this? I'm sure we can work it out, she said. We can't solve this. There is nothing to decide here. Kurt, you know I love you. It's just my personality, she said. No, I don't know that you love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't sleep with your boss, I replied. It is not true. What's not true? The fact that I don't know if you love me or the fact that you're sleeping with your boss? She was silent for a few seconds. Both. Catherine, I saw you with him at the motel. Don't try to deny it. She gasped. Why? I asked. I really wanted to know. It was a mistake. It was the only time. Nonsense! Catherine. I'm tired of listening to your lies, I said, hanging up and turning off the phone. About half an hour later, there was a knock on my door. It was her father. He was like a second father to me. I knew him for over 25 years. When he entered, I saw confusion on his face. What did she tell you? I asked. That you had a fight and you kicked her out, he replied. This means that half-truths were now in normal handwriting here. I shook my head. So how did she explain that she was in prison? I asked. You know her character. She told me that after you kicked her out, she went into your garage and started burning your car repair manuals and it got out of control. I shook my head again. I think you need to ask her the truth. So tell me, what is the truth? He asked. I don't think you really want to hear it, Mr. O'Brien. Why these formalities, son? You know that I consider you my son, he said. Because soon we won't have such a relationship. You'll probably hate me. Is it so bad? He asked, hesitantly. I nodded my head, and he understood. How long? Don't know. I know our relationship changed about 2 years ago. 3 months ago, things started to get worse, and the last month has been almost unbearable. I saw the pain in his eyes. No father wants to even think about his daughter having sex, especially with someone other than her husband. He nodded at me, turned, and walked out the door. A few hours later, I received a message from him that only said, I'm sorry. So she had to confess. He probably went home and put her in the hot seat. I'm sure there were a lot of raised voices in that house. I wouldn't be surprised if he immediately took her to the confessional. Whether she told the priest everything, some or nothing, I couldn't even guess. When I called the owner, he immediately recognized my name. Kurt, how are you doing? What do I owe this call to? Sorry, sir, but this will not be a very pleasant call. About? He said, and waited silently while I collected my thoughts. How do I tell a man that the woman he knows as my wife was having an affair with his business manager? I thought you should know that my wife and I are getting a divorce, I said. Oh, I'm very sorry to hear that. She has always been a great employee for me. So what does this have to do with me? I heard hesitation in his voice. He knew that I wouldn't call him if it didn't affect him in some way. The reason for the divorce is that she had an affair with Carl Benson. I'm sorry, but I won't be kind to him, and some consequences may hit your business. Oh, crap, he said. I knew I should have trusted my instincts when I asked him for the interview. I asked him why he wanted to leave his family. He was already divorced, but he has children. Sorry, I probably should have checked it more thoroughly. It's not your fault. They're both adults. They knew what they were getting into. Kurt, can you give me until the end of the week? I can't change the past, but I can definitely change the future for both of them. Sir, if you fire Catherine, it will cause me financial harm in the divorce. I would appreciate your help with this, if you don't mind. She's always done a great job for me, so yeah, I think it makes sense to keep her. I thanked him, and we ended our conversation. He was always a guy I liked, and him keeping her would have helped me a lot. Divorce papers were handed to her at work. I asked that this be done in a way that would cause her as little shame and pain as possible. I met many of her employees and could say that we had friendly relations. I wondered how they would look at me now. She called me immediately as soon as she received them. I listened for about 2 seconds. When the first words you hear when you say hello are, "You fucking bastard," you know the conversation is not worth continuing, so I hung up. As a mechanic, you learn quite a lot about what makes a car work or not work. I have never used my knowledge on a car with malicious intent before. However, this was about to change. Carl Benson's Lexus was due to get a new engine soon. Depending on what he decides to do, another engine or transmission could fail. They say, knowledge is power. I have to agree with them. Friday was not a good day for Carl. He was late for work because he had to have his car towed from the side of the road halfway to work. When he arrived at the place, the owner was waiting for him. He was released for conduct unbecoming of a person in his position. Catherine called me, and I answered cheerfully. "Hello, Catherine. What have you done?" That's what I heard. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "You know perfectly well what I'm talking about," she snapped back. "Catherine, I think it's time to start speaking through our lawyers. Please don't call me again," and hung up when she tried to tell me something. I knew this would make her angry. She tried to call back, but I sent the call to voicemail and then deleted it. My revenge on her lover was not yet over. I called his ex-wife and explained my situation. She was very happy to help me. She came into town on Saturday night and I made a reservation at our family's favorite restaurant. I asked Kevin and Caitlin to join me. I was hesitant to involve them in this matter, but I needed to be sure that Catherine and, by extension, Carl knew about it. The three of us arrived before Carl's ex-wife. That's how it was planned. The table was set for 4, so I'm sure my kids thought their mom would join us. When Molly, Carl's wife, came to the table, I stood up and pulled out a chair for her. My children looked at me questioningly. "Kevin, Caitlin, this is Molly Benson. She agreed to have dinner with us this evening." They didn't understand anything. I continued. "Molly is Carl Benson's ex-wife. She is the ex-wife of your mother's lover. I thought it would be nice to hear her story." Throughout dinner, she told us about what led to her divorce. She talked about how she forgave him for cheating once, but when he did it again, she realized she couldn't trust him. Trust is necessary in any relationship, friendship, business, or marriage. If you don't have trust, you don't have what it takes to survive. She continued, "Your father and I wanted to meet with you so that you could understand the reasons for his divorce from your mother, not because he doesn't love her. I'm sure he still loves her, although he may hate her now. The reason for divorce is trust. If he can't trust her, he will always wonder when she comes home late or leaves on business. You can't live like that. Believe me, I know." By the end of dinner, we were all talking like one family. They asked her questions and she answered them truthfully. She asked them very pointed questions, and I learned that a year ago they were already wondering if something was wrong with them. I think that the husband will be the last to know about this, or even suspect. When we got up to leave, we all hugged each other, and when Caitlin asked if I was going straight home, I replied, "I'm going to ask Molly to the dance, if she's still able." I looked at her, and she nodded her head. Caitlin looked at me, and I knew what she was thinking. We danced until 11, and then I took her to the hotel. She invited me to go up to her room, but I refused. As much as I liked her and would have loved to have sex with her as revenge, it wasn't quite right. Filing for divorce was too fresh. However, I told her that I would pick her up for breakfast. Old habits die hard, so Saturday morning found us at my favorite breakfast spot. The waitress saw me and came up with the words, "As usual for you two?" When she looked up from her order pad, she saw that my wife was not with me. She looked at me incredulously. "Heather, let me introduce you to Molly. She and I danced the night away, and now we want to have a hearty breakfast to refresh ourselves." She winced a little, and then said, "What should I bring you?" I ordered my usual dish, and Molly ordered eggs Benedict. We sat and talked and laughed, knowing what Heather was thinking, and I knew that one way or another, my soon-to-be ex would find out. We returned to her hotel, and she checked out. We spent the afternoon together, and I thought, how could someone cheat on such a nice, beautiful woman? She left early in the evening to return before it was too late. She said before leaving, "If you ever want to spend more time together, let me know." I can agree to this sooner than you think, if you're still free. For some reason, I doubted that she would be free. She was a catch. But unfortunately, I had not been fishing yet. As I expected, Catherine found out about both my dinner and breakfast with Molly. The next week, Catherine called me. "So are you already dating other women? You know we're still married." "That didn't stop you," I said. "And besides, I didn't have sex with her." "Yes, of course, in the evening for dinner and in the morning for breakfast. Did you just talk all night?" "What we did doesn't concern you anymore. We're getting a divorce. Have you signed the papers yet?" I asked. "No. I don't want to get a divorce." "Well, what you want won't interfere with it. It'll just take longer." "It's your own fault. Just sign the papers and we'll move on," I said. "Ask your father if he would take you back if he were in my place." There was silence on the other end. She knew her father. He would never agree to this. A few days later, I learned from my lawyer that Catherine had signed the papers. She probably talked to her father. Of course, as anyone who has been divorced knows, you have to communicate with your ex, especially if you have children. Caitlin's graduation was the first time I saw her, a week after the breakup. She was with her family. We weren't sitting next to each other, but I could see that she was looking at me, as I'm sure she saw that I was looking at her. After the ceremony, I went downstairs to congratulate Caitlin. Catherine was with her, as were her parents. I shook her father's hand and he pulled me in for a hug. Her mother was more distant. Apparently, the women stuck together. I was glad that her father understood what I was getting at. Catherine turned to me and I was surprised. Now that I was closer to her, I could see how much older she looked. She had lost weight, which suited her, but her face showed a woman with a lot on her mind. I even felt sorry for her until she said, "Well, are you still dating Carl's ex?" She said this in a tone that implied that we were sleeping together. I didn't try to dissuade her. "She's an amazing woman. We had a great time." Then I asked, "Where is Carl?" I thought he would be here. "Kurt, you know that he was fired," I would add, "because of you. He had a hard time finding a job and my boss didn't give him a great recommendation. He had to move out of state. Just to do some more digging, I asked, "And he didn't take you?" She looked at me. "I never loved him." "You didn't love me enough either," I said and left. I heard her break down and her mother say, "Asshole." I didn't know that this church-going lady knew such a word. The open house was scheduled for next Saturday. Catherine and I agreed to hold it at our house. Yes, it was still our house. The divorce was not yet final. I allowed her to make all the arrangements, which also meant lifting the restraining order and giving her free access to the house. It was hard for me to see her in her usual environment, doing her usual things. Molly was right. I still loved her, even though I hated her. When we were cleaning up after Caitlin left with her friends, I was in the kitchen picking up trash. Catherine came up to me and said, "Thank you for hosting an open day here and letting me be there." "You will always be her mother," I said, continuing to work with the garbage. "Kurt, can you look at me?" I stopped what I was doing and looked up at her. "I'm sorry I did this to us," she said. This was the first time she apologized for the affair. "Why did you do this?" I asked, wanting to know the reason. She cried and ran out of the room. She still couldn't tell me. Months passed. Our divorce progressed. Irish luck came upon me again. Late last year, when Caitlin received her college acceptance letter, we took out a second mortgage on our house. We took $100,000 from our equity. We paid $50,000 for her training and gave Kevin $50,000 to open his own auto repair shop. He followed in his father's footsteps, taking classes at the high school tech center, taking business classes online, and earning his ASE certification while working at my old store. I was so proud of him and told him I would be happy to help in any way I could. Luckily, this meant that other than some 401ks and small savings, there was very little capital to split up. We sold the house and split about $15,000. There was no alimony, since we both earned approximately the same. Catherine pleaded guilty to arson and was given a 2-year suspended sentence. She also had to attend anger management classes. This seems to have helped. She also started seeing a therapist regularly. which helped even more. When the divorce was finalized, she called me and asked if we could sit and talk somewhere. Of course, I said. How about our favorite restaurant? When I entered the restaurant 10 minutes before we were supposed to be there, I saw that she was already sitting there. I could tell she was nervous, but she looked better. We ordered food and had light conversation while we ate. Then, without taking her eyes off her plate, she said, "It's cute, but I miss it." "Me too," I said. She looked up at me. "I'm sorry," I asked again. "Why?" She knew what I was asking. I was stupid. I saw him, handsome, ambitious, worldly, and then I looked at you, still living in the same city, in a job that leads nowhere, and without ambition. I know you took this job to be a part of our children's lives, and they have thrived because of it. If you didn't take this job, you'd work until 6 every day and miss most of their games. You sacrificed your future for them. I lost awareness of this and lost respect for you because of it. I'm sorry. I'm also sorry that I reacted that way. I'm sorry I burned down your garage. I learned a lot from anger management classes and therapy." "Wow," she said. "I'm sorry more times in this conversation than she has in the last 10 years. Perhaps she has changed." "Thank you," I said. "I'm sorry that I didn't live up to your expectations." We parted, hugging, and she whispered to me, "If you ever need an outlet to relieve stress, let me know. You have always been the best." I blushed, but doubted I would accept her offer. It was probably spoiled fruit. When I was driving home, I called Molly. "Are you still free? Or has someone already caught you?" "I am free. I dated a guy, but he found a younger model who he thought was more to his liking." "I'm sorry to hear it for you, but I'm glad to hear it for myself. When can we meet?" "Mine or yours," she said. "At your place, if you don't mind." "Certainly." I'm glad she agreed. I wanted to take revenge and have sex in her house, in her bed, which her ex-husband was still paying for. We had a great dinner and then went back to her house. Her children, who were still living at home, went to stay with their father for a week. I needed to be honest with her. "Molly, I really like you. I don't know where this will lead, but I want you to know that I'm doing this for 2 reasons. First, you are a hot woman, and don't let anyone make you think otherwise. The second reason is that I want to take revenge for having sex. It will be my first time since I found out that my wife was with your husband. I hope this doesn't bother you. I respect you and don't want you to feel like I'm using you." "Kurt," she said, "ever since you contacted me and we talked over these months, I realized that I want you too. Part of me also wants revenge. I know that Carl and I weren't married when your wife cheated with him, but I never got my revenge for his other sluts. I would like to even the score, at least a little." With that, we ran to the bedroom. We were like teenagers, hot and horny. She undressed slowly and I enjoyed the spectacle. When she finished, I admired her body. It was obvious that she played sports. She stood at the other end of the room, naked, looking like a goddess. We had sex. I used all my rich practice and experience on it. Every woman, as I learned from watching adult films, reacts differently to different things. Being sensitive to this, I began to read her body language. She liked what I did, but it was different from what I was used to with my ex-wife. I continued to work on it. I can't count how many times she's risen to the top. Finally, she said, "No more. Kurt, please take me. I need you now." Everything that happened next was very hot. Finally, we collapsed onto the bed, our chests heaving up and down. Then she said, "Everything that he did to me was amazing. I like how you do it." This was said in the same tone as Catherine's words. She compared me to her past husband and other lovers she had. This time, however, I smiled, my ego inflated. I knew that what I had done was far beyond anything she had ever experienced. Definitely better than with her ex, which is why Catherine said the same thing in the same manner. I lay there, chest still heaving, thinking about my ex. I thought about our relationship. Even in the early days, I noticed Catherine's bad temper. Over the years, he got worse. She would get angry about something and attack me verbally and sometimes even physically. Yes, I'm Irish, and I have a short temper too, but I would never return physical violence to her. I was taught never to hit a woman. When she became physically violent, I simply went to my doghouse. This probably made her respect me even less. In her eyes, I wasn't ready to stay and fight back. I think to her, I was a weakling. When she started burning down my garage with me, I realized that I could not continue in the same spirit. I couldn't trust her. If we had a fight one evening, I might wake up in sharp pain and find a knife stuck in me. I couldn't risk it. This disrespect and loss of trust caused by the infidelity made me decide to end my marriage once and for all. Now I was a free man. Will I ever be able to completely trust a woman again? Will I ever be able to let her into my life? Molly, I knew, was just an opportunity to get revenge and regain some of my pride. She was a wonderful woman, but I knew it would never be a couple type of relationship. We could be friends with benefits, but that would be it. We could not build a relationship on the hostility we felt towards our ex-spouses. As we lay there, I said, "You are an amazing woman, Molly. You knew exactly what I needed." "I?" she said. "You were the only one who did all the work." "You knew exactly what I needed, and when. You are an incredible and generous lover. I can't believe your ex would look elsewhere when you were at home waiting for her to satisfy her needs. What an idiot. I know for sure that she didn't get it from my ex." My head was swelling. Such conversations restored my self-esteem, which was undermined by betrayal. I told her that she was only the second woman I had ever been with. In fact, she was only the second woman I'd even kissed. She was surprised, to say the least. "How did you manage to become so good at this?" "Practice," I said. "Catherine and I dated for 4 years before the wedding. On our wedding night, we were still virgins. But during this time, we practiced a lot. Well, you knew exactly what my needs were when I needed them. I've never experienced anything so good. I think I can sense that what I'm doing is meeting the needs of the moment," I said. "I would call it an excellent sense of perception. You anticipated my wants and needs before I was even aware of myself." "Thank you. You do wonders for my ego," I said, blushing. We spent the rest of the night cuddling, sleeping, and early in the morning we started again. By the time I left, everything hurt from sex. This woman was a dynamo. When I left, she kissed me passionately. I hope this continues. "Me too, but I'm not ready for a serious relationship yet." Then I said hesitantly, I really enjoy the time I spend with you, but I have a favor to ask of you. I will reciprocate if you want me to." "What are you talking about?" she asked. "If you don't mind, I'd like to somehow make sure that your ex finds out about what happened last night. I'll make sure mine does too if you want." "That sounds deliciously decadent," she said, smiling slyly. "I'm sorry if I seemed vindictive to you, and I don't want you to think that's the only reason I did it." "No problem. I was thinking the same thing. I like to get a little revenge when someone does me wrong." Once I got into the car, I took out my phone and texted Catherine. "Call me when you have time. Maybe Monday. Nothing urgent." I have never used all these abbreviations in posts. Probably just old-fashioned. Less than 3 minutes later, she called me. "Hey, Kurt. Do you accept my offer?" "No, I'm exhausted. I won't need this for a while. Molly is very energetic." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard her whisper to herself, 8, 9, 10. "You idiot. Should have called to get the injection." So the red-haired Irish woman showed her character again. This time, she at least counted to 10. "Stop. I didn't call you. I texted you. He said it wasn't urgent. Could you call me on Monday?" "Sorry," she said. Apparently, anger management classes only partially worked. But she still apologized. "I wanted you to call me about your plans with Caitlin for the near future. Do you have any vacation plans that I should know about?" I needed to find an excuse for her to call me so I could make a little barb about Molly. "Oh, I'll need to call you back. I'll talk to her and find out what she would like to do." "Okay, anytime, just let me know." I hoped that my casual attitude about the fact that we were divorced would touch a nerve with her. I wish she could feel that it didn't matter to me that I was left without her. In fact, it hurt me. I think guys have a harder time dealing with divorce than women. I don't know for sure if this is a Neanderthal feeling, like losing my woman, or if it's the competitive nature of guys. We don't like to lose anything. I just knew it hurt, and I wasn't going to let myself get hurt like that again. Well, not for a long time anyway. About a week later, something happened that I kind of expected. Carl knocked on my door. More precisely, he was banging on my door. I called 911 and they answered. Having told them my address, I hung up and opened the door. He burst inside. I shouted, "Carl Benson, get out of my apartment. You have no right to be here." "I do not care. I'll punch you in the face now," he shouted. "Get the hell out," I shouted back. "You were a piece of shit when you fucked my wife, and you're still a piece of shit. What's your problem now?" "Stay away from my wife," he shouted. "You mean your ex-wife? She kicked your ass out years ago for cheating on her. I guess you never learned your lesson," I answered. "Stay away from Molly," he ranted. "Why should I stay away from her? She's a great piece of ass and enjoys what I do to her." Then he lost his temper. He came at me with all his might. I parried the first blow, but allowed the second to hit me. I needed to show the damage. A guy who works on cars, even part-time, is usually in better shape than someone who sits at a desk in an office. By the time the cops arrived, I was in bad shape, but he looked even worse. They separated us, found out that I was the one who made the call, and then they put him in a patrol car and sent him to the station. After cleaning myself up a bit, I called Molly to tell her that her ex-husband was in prison. "I know," she said. "Can you believe he had the nerve to call me to post bail for him?" She paused and then asked, "Are you okay?" "A little damaged, but he got the worst of it." "I'll come now and play nurse," she said, and hung up. About an hour later, she nursed me back to health. I was glad I worked the late shift the next day. I didn't have to get up until 11, and even then I only got about 4 hours of sleep. As she left, she told me again, "I like how you do it." I wondered if I should stop. I don't want to get too carried away. Soon I had a serious conversation with her. After lunch, while I was at work, Catherine called me. I had no clients at this time, so I answered the call. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Well, hello to you too," I said. "Yes, hi. And why did you do that?" "What are you talking about?" I said, playing the fool. "You put Carl under arrest." "No, he imprisoned himself." "That's not what he said," she replied. "Well, you take the word of your lover, not your ex-husband." It sounds something like this. "He is not my lover. This was more than a month ago." "That's what you say," I teased. "Why do you have to be such an asshole?" she said. "I guess I had a good teacher," I answered. "Well, will you drop the charges?" she asked. "Why on earth? He bursts into my apartment without an invitation and starts beating me. Why should I drop the charges? Because he will lose his job. And because I asked you to?" she said. "You are no longer my wife. I don't have to do everything you say. You no longer have the right to ask me for anything." I hung up. So, months after she supposedly stopped having sex with him, she was still trying to help him. He was charged with assault and battery, and will likely spend at least 90 days in jail. He will definitely lose his job because of this. I just smiled when I heard this. That Thursday, I found myself at what used to be our bar, Smitty's. I know I should have thought about this more, but when everything in your life is going wrong, familiar things help you focus. I was sitting at a small table in a pub, sipping a beer, when I heard a familiar laugh. Of course, it was my ex. When I looked in the direction where the laughter was coming from, I saw that she was with all the girls from her office. There were half a dozen of them, and they were heading here. Catherine saw me and almost stopped in her tracks. She turned to her friends and said something that I didn't hear. They turned around and found a table as far away from me as possible. The problem for them was that in order to go to the toilet, they would have to walk past my table or around the entire room. After about 10 minutes, the two women headed to the toilet. I thought, what is it with women? Why can't they go to the toilet alone? Should there always be at least one more woman with them? Anyway, one of the women stopped at my table. "You're Catherine's ex, aren't you?" I nodded my head. "I've heard a lot about you," she said, with a sparkle in her eyes. I wasn't sure what that look was or what she could hear. I thought it would be no good if it came from my ex. On the way out of the restroom, both women stopped and spoke to me. They were actually flirting with me. One of them was probably 10 years younger than me, the other was 15 years younger. I think women don't have the same code as guys. Guys don't hit on or date their friends' exes. This didn't seem to be a problem. Of course I flirted back. If I could sleep, even just for one night, with one of these women, it would be one more thing to irritate my ex-wife. Yes, I was vindictive. I wondered how long it would be before the need for revenge faded. As the two women began to leave my table, one of them reached out to shake my hand. "Nice to meet you. Maybe we'll meet again." In her hand, as she shook mine, was a piece of paper. I quietly took it and waited for them to return to their table before looking at it. It was her business card, and on the back was her mobile phone number. Shannon Lozano will definitely get a call from me. Looking at their table, I saw Catherine looking at me. There was sadness in her eyes, but it was replaced by the rage that I had seen in her eyes so often before. I thought about our relationship. I loved her, I still love her, but she was always like an active volcano, ready to explode at any moment. The fact that I lived with it for so long was a testament to the fact that love can make you blind and willing to put up with almost anything. I would still be there if she hadn't cheated on me. Was I better now? I don't know. Ignorance is bliss, so I guess I was in my own bliss. Looking at my beer, I saw that it was almost empty. After drinking it, I threw a 10 on the table, waved to the waitress, and left. I didn't look towards my ex's table. I didn't want her to see the tears that started to appear in my eyes. Late on Saturday morning, I took a business card out of my pocket and called the number provided. Shannon answered the phone on the third ring. "Hello?" she said, uncertainty. "Hello, Shannon. This is Kurt McCarthy. We met at the bar on Thursday night." "Yes, I remember you. You are that handsome man who was sitting alone and drinking beer." I blushed at the compliment. Yes, it was me. I just needed to relax with my thoughts. "Would you like to talk to someone about these thoughts?" Such unceremoniously shocked me somewhat. "Yes, I think I would like to." I heard my words before I even thought about it. "How about tonight?" she suggested. This time, I only took a second to think. "Sure, how about Smitty's at 7:30? "I will be there." When I hung up, I was really nervous. What could a woman, perhaps 10 years younger than me, see in me? Will I even know how to behave? I haven't been on a date in over 25 years. What do women want? What do they expect? Well, there was only one way to find out, and tonight was going to be that evening. I dressed business casual, which was a little over the top for Smitty's on a Saturday night, but I wanted her to see that I had put in the extra effort. We immediately hit it off. She was pleasant to look at and pleasant to talk to. After I felt comfortable with her, I asked the question that had been on my mind since I met her. "Well, you work with my ex, so I'm sure you've heard the worst things about me. Why did you, knowing this, want to meet me?" "Well, before she started talking to Carl, about a year before you filed for divorce, she said some things about you that intrigued and excited me." "She had sex with Carl for a whole year?" I said, amazed. "No, they were just talking and having lunch." "Well, you understand. I think she probably started her affair about 3 months before you served her. This was consistent with what I knew about her change in attitude. I'm sure she felt guilty at first, but as things progressed, she probably thought I was ignorant and lost all respect for me." Shannon continued. "Before this year, when we were having bachelorette parties, she said several times that she was pleased with your performance, if you know what I mean. She looked at me with those eyes that only women seem to possess and licked her lips. I blushed. I know some women talk about such things, but I never thought that Catherine was one of them. Don't be embarrassed. If you're half as good as she led us to believe, you'll have a pleasant adventure." She looked at me like a lioness looks at a gazelle. What have I gotten myself into? As we finished our food and drinks, the waitress came to the table with our check. She smiled at me when I handed her $50 and said, "You can leave this check. Maybe you will win a prize." I looked at her with a puzzled expression on my face. She looked me straight in the eyes and winked. I put the check in my pocket, and as we walked out, Shannon put her hand on mine and said in a soft voice, "And now dessert." Once again, I was amazed. I had been out of the dating scene for too long. "At my place or yours?" she asked me. "I'll let you decide." I wanted her to feel as comfortable as possible, so if she prefers home territory, that's where we'll go. "Let's go to yours. You can tell a lot about a person by seeing how he lives." "I'd like to know a little more about you," she said. So we went to my place. She jumped in my truck, so at some point, I had to get her back to get her car. I asked her, "Do you think your car will be fine here for the rest of the evening?" Yes, I knew I was being presumptuous, but she didn't give me the slightest hint that it wouldn't be all evening. Oh, I took Uber for this very reason, and again, I felt that I was at odds with today's reality. When we walked in the door, we started tearing off our clothes. Running into the bedroom, she kissed me passionately. Our first round was amazing. I learned so much with every new woman I made love to. When it was all over, she took a deep breath and, having calmed down a little, said, "I like how you do it." There it was again, comparing my actions with past lovers. Yes, I was glad that she liked it, and it again pleased my ego, but it again reminded me of my ex. We took a break and then continued to have sex. When we finally fell asleep, exhausted, we slept until 10 a.m. the next morning. We continued making love until we were tired and hungry. We had lunch at Chili's, and then I took her home. She made me promise that I would call her for a repeat performance. I assured her that I would call. On the way to my apartment, I stopped at the store, and when I went to pay for groceries, I noticed a receipt from Smitty's in my wallet. I pulled it out and saw that the waitress had written her name and phone number on it. We had to get used to this new reality. On Monday after work, I went back to Smitty's and the waitress, Helen, was there. She was closer to my age, and after we talked for a while, I asked her when we could go out. Since the weekend was a working day for her, we decided to spend it on Wednesday. She had a day off. As I was walking to my pickup, I received a call. "Hello," I said, not recognizing the number. "Hello, Kurt," said a female voice. "Yes," I answered. "My name is Bethany. I met you last Thursday evening. Shannon and I stopped by your table at Smitty's." "Oh, yes, I remember you." "Well, I talked to Shannon today. She said she had a great time with you on Saturday night, and I was wondering if we could go out sometime." "Am I too old for you?" I asked. "Not at all. I've always dated older guys. They are much more experienced and easier to find a common language with." Well, of course. How about this Saturday? Will it do?" I said. "Of course," she said. "Where would you like to go?" I asked. "Anywhere. I'll let you decide." "I'm flexible," she said. Well, we made a date for Saturday night, and she was flexible. Some of the things we tried I never thought were possible. My Wednesday date with Helen was also wonderful. As with Shannon and Molly before her, I was told, "I like how you do it." Both women. On Sunday, Molly called and invited me to come over for dinner. Homemade food sounded great, so I agreed. After a wonderful meal, we spent time playing with her. I was starting to really enjoy my single life. On Monday evening, I received a call, which I honestly expected. It was Catherine. "What the hell are you doing?" she asked me in a tone that I had heard many times before. "I'm sitting here watching TV," I answered, playing dumb. "No, I mean you. A man over 40 years old who dates women 10 and 15 years younger than you. Don't you have any remorse?" "You must be talking about Shannon and Bethany," I said bluntly. "Yes, sure." They both asked me out on a date, and instead of spending time alone, I agreed. Dating has certainly changed. I like the fact that I didn't have to ask a woman out and face possible rejection. It's nice to be wanted and appreciated. "Then stop dating the people I work with," she demanded. "Why should I do this?" "Because I said so," she replied. Well, again, I don't have to do whatever you tell me anymore. We're not married anymore. I will date whoever I want. You're only doing this to make my life difficult, she said. No, I'm not making it more difficult, but if this is so, then this is an additional bonus. How do my dates with any of them affect you at all? They whisper behind my back and then openly say, I can't believe she let him get away. Basically, they call me an idiot. I thought, well, if the shoes fit, but instead said, I'll ask them to keep our extracurricular activities to themselves. Will this help? No, just stop dating them, she demanded again. I won't do this unless they themselves announce the end of meetings. I enjoy spending time with each of them. They make me feel young and do wonders for my ego. You're an idiot, she said, hanging up. I smiled and sat back, thinking about the time I spent with each of them. They really did wonders for my ego. On Wednesday, I spent another pleasant evening with Helen. My life has been one pleasant time after another. On Thursday evening, Catherine called me again. So what now? I thought to myself. I haven't met Shannon or Bethany yet, so I haven't had a chance to talk to them. Yes, how can I help you, Catherine? I said, answering the call. Is it true? And the waitress from Smitty's too? Well, she's more suitable for her age. I thought you didn't want me to date younger women? I don't want you to date at all. I always have to answer their questions about what could be wrong that I let you go, she said irritably. Well, just tell them that someone else who was more in your style, more in line with your aspirations in life. She paused, then said in a thin voice, I'll just tell them I was stupid. Then she hung up. I sat and thought about my life. Catherine and I had good times, but then she started to pull away. This was around the same time that Carl was hired, so maybe something was going on even then. Now at least she said she was repentant. I had mixed feelings about this. Of course, part of me was glad that she felt stupid for leaving everything we had. Another part of me just wanted things to go back to normal. I knew this would never happen. The past cannot be changed, and I will never forget this part of the past, and will never be able to live with it. Sitting there, I began to feel sorry for myself. I ran out of beer and decided to go to the store. As I was leaving the store with a case of Shinerbach, I got a call. It was Shannon. What are you doing? She said when I picked up the phone. I had just bought a case of beer and was heading home to drown my sorrows. Can I help you with this? I can try to cheer you up. Of course, you might be just what the doctor ordered. We drank, had sex, and I pleasured her again. She expressed her pleasure many times. At about 2 o'clock in the morning, she said, I have to work tomorrow, so I'd better leave. Oh, I said, by the way, I appreciate that you and Bethany mentioned something to Catherine, but if you could keep tonight to yourself, I would appreciate it. She was a little depressed when I talked to her earlier. Of course, but still, it's hard to believe that she let you go, she said. Thank you, you have successfully relieved me of sadness. Anytime, she said. And I'm serious, anytime. Over the next year, the number of my friends with benefits grew. Friends Shannon, Bethany, Molly, and Helen. They all heard about my abilities and asked to try the product. I didn't refuse any of them. Every woman, no matter the shape, size, or color, was an enjoyable experience for me. I learned to please all of them. Each of them had something different that they liked and that pushed them over the edge. Catherine at first started calling me a slut. I didn't mind. I liked women and I liked giving them pleasure. Each of them, at one time or another, uttered the phrase that started it all. I like how you do it. When Catherine got used to seeing me or hearing about me with one woman or another, she saw me at Smitty's and actually asked me out. You know that we had a good time together. Why not? For old time's sake, she asked. I couldn't go for it. It wouldn't be the same. When we were together, everything I did for you and with you was done in love. Now we would just use each other. I understand, she said sadly and returned to her table. The day finally came when I received my Napa franchise. The owner was true to his word. He thanked me for my years of work by issuing a more than generous ransom for me. I had to take out a loan, but the business was good and growing, so I wasn't worried about paying off a large amount. When I agreed to this deal, I initially counted on financial stability and security in Catherine's and my old age. Now, it would only be my old age. That evening, I called Catherine and invited her to dinner. She agreed, and I booked a table at the best restaurant in the city. I called and told her that a car would be picking her up and that she should dress appropriately. She looked radiant when she entered the restaurant. She did her best. She wore a long black dress that showed just the right amount of skin. The black color highlighted her red hair and green eyes. I had no doubt why I married her all those years ago. I just wanted to be enough for her. When she approached the table, I stood up. "You look amazing, Catherine." "Thank you. You look very handsome in that tuxedo, too." "On what occasion?" she asked. "It's my holiday, and I wanted you to be the first one to tell me about it." "Now I'm curious," she said. "Let's sit down and eat. We can discuss this while enjoying the food and the atmosphere," I said, keeping her on the edge of her seat. We made small talk after we ordered and as the meal began. As we moved on to the main course, our conversation also became more focused. Finally, she said, "That's it? I can't do it anymore. So what are you celebrating?" I smiled. I wondered when it would crack. "Catherine, after our wedding, I worked as a mechanic, turning wrenches, as we call it. You seem pleased, even happy about this. I did, however, feel a little stuck in my job. In addition, as you know, Kevin and Caitlin began to actively engage in sports. My job didn't allow me to take time off work to participate." "Yes, I know. We discussed it," she said. "Yes, we discussed it, and I thought that when I told you about working at Napa and its flexible schedule, you would be happy about the change." "And I exploded," she said. "I also told you that this will be good for us in the long run." "Yes, I remember," she reminded me. She looked down at her hands and fell silent. "Well, I worked for my family, our children, their activities, and also you. All this was to make our lives better." She looked up at me, sadness shining on her face. "And I destroyed it. I didn't invite you here to make you remember the bad times. Like I said, I brought you here to celebrate." She looked at me hopefully. I wasn't sure what was on her mind. "Well, today I just signed the documents to purchase the Napa franchise with 4 existing stores." I was beaming. She looked at me with a dazed and confused expression. She couldn't believe what I said and didn't understand what it meant. Looking at her, I said, "I know it will be harder work, but now I have a legacy, something that will financially support me for the rest of my life." I smiled again. "The reason I wanted to tell you first is because it will be something that should provide our children with a large inheritance after my death. They will be able to either continue the franchise or sell it and get money. Our grandchildren, when they arrive, will benefit from this business. I can't express how satisfied I feel." I looked at her again. She was melancholic. "What's happened?" She started crying. "I listened to Carl when he told me that you are a failure, without ambition, without drive, without goals. He said that you will die without achieving anything in life." Now she was really crying. "I ruined everything because I lost faith in my husband. Believing what he said made me lose all respect for you. It was easy to say yes to him back then when he wanted to show me how much better he was than you. Oh, Kurt, forgive me for what I thought about you and how I treated you. You were a great husband until I ruined it. You were a great father. Luckily, I didn't ruin that. Finally, you were the best lover. They tell me this over and over again, but I threw it all away. I'm sorry, Kurt. I hope you believe me. I'm sorry for everything I did to you that led to us ending up where we are now." She stood up from her chair, crying, and headed to the toilet. One of the servers noticed this and followed her into the restroom. Women simply cannot go to the toilet alone. I wanted tonight to be a celebration so that our children and grandchildren could have access to wealth. I guess I didn't think that the news would affect her so much. I felt sorry for her. She was in great pain, but I could not console her. I couldn't open that door. It would cause her too much pain if I did. Life makes us aware of the consequences of our actions. Sometimes this realization causes us great pain. I caught the attention of our server and asked her to bring the check. I knew that Catherine would not be in the mood to continue our evening together. When she returned, she walked over to the table, and before she could say anything, I stood up. "I've already paid the bill, now I can take you home." "Thank you. I'm sorry that I ruined your holiday. Just like I destroyed us." She cried quietly all the way home. I wanted to hug her so badly, but it might send the wrong signal, and I couldn't risk it. When I led her to the door of her apartment, she opened it and looked at me expressively. "Don't you want to come in?" "I'm sorry, Catherine, but we can't go back there." She nodded, turned, and closed the door behind her. The next few years were busy with business, life, and lots of women. They say word of mouth is the best advertising. Not a week went by that I didn't have at least 2 different women with whom I had adventures. Of course, I have always practiced safe sex. I wouldn't want to end up with something or hand something over to one of the women. Catherine and I talked sometimes. Lately, we've been talking about Kevin's engagement. He had only been dating her for about 8 months, but he knew she was the one. She came to his shop to get her car repaired, and he was floored. Her name was Amber Williams. They were going to have an engagement party to introduce everyone they knew. Kevin was hesitant to get into a relationship with anyone until his business became successful. Although his business was not growing as quickly as he would have liked, he knew that she was the one. On the day of the engagement, I arrived early to help Kevin get everything ready. I rented a conference room at the local Sheraton Hotel, and we bought a couple of 6-foot sub from Subway with all accessories. As we were finishing our preparations, Catherine came in. She still looked good after all. We had been together for over 25 years. She walked over to where I was standing by the punch bowl. "We never got engaged, Kurt." "No, but everyone we knew both of us." "Do you remember how you proposed to me?" she asked. "Of course, maybe I'm getting old, but I can't forget my wedding or my vows." Sometimes I just wanted to hurt her. She caused me so much pain. She looked at me and said defiantly, "I said I was sorry. Can't we forget about this? It's been 3 years already." "Yes, I'm sorry, but it's Kevin and Amber's day. I'm sure we can be cordial throughout this." "It would be great. Maybe from now on we could be cordial," she said in the tone of condescending demand that she used so often when we were married. She was so controversial to me. Sometimes she acted as if she really repented of what she had done, and sometimes her former temper and cruelty came out. Kevin and Amber's family and friends started showing up, so we had to be welcoming. Kevin and Amber greeted everyone as they entered, introduced everyone as they entered, and introduced them to the other partygoers. About 45 minutes into the party, I was talking to Kevin and Caitlin when I heard Amber's voice. "Mother." I turned to look and saw the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, dressed in a beautiful floral sundress. She was about 173 centimeters tall, with a good figure, yellow blonde hair like her daughter, bottomless blue eyes that I could see from across the room, and a smile that made my heart skip a beat. Dad, Dad," said Kevin. "This is Amber's mother, but even though she's divorced, she's not the one for you." I looked at him, puzzled. "Dad, she's very religious. That's why she forced Amber to go to a Christian college here in town. This is her alma mater. Dad, Amber's father cheated on her and she hates men with your, lifestyle." "Kevin," I said, "before your mother left me, I was a one-woman man. I would like to have a monogamous woman whom I could trust and give my heart to." "Well, I don't know if she's the one. I don't think she'll give you a chance at all, but I'll introduce you." "That would be great, son," I said, and he led me to where Amber and her mother were standing. "Mrs. Williams, I would like to introduce you to my father, Kurt." "Kevin, you're engaged. Can't you call me Mom?" At this time, Catherine approached. "It's possible, as long as he doesn't forget who his real mother is." Kevin turned. "Mom, this is Amber's mom, Elise." They hugged and started talking while I walked away. It was so much like Catherine to barge in just as I was about to start a conversation with a beautiful woman. I thought it would be better not to stay here. I might say something to Catherine that would give Elise a bad impression of me. I would like our first conversation to be positive. I mingled with other friends and family members. Many men made fun of me about all the women I knew. Some of the women seemed a little distant, but others were quite friendly. When I was talking to a divorced woman, Catherine came up and said to her, "You better be careful with him. You never know what you might catch." I got angry, so I looked at the woman, Charisse, and said, "Don't pay any attention to her. She's just angry that I don't give her mercy." "Kurt, you're an ass," Catherine said. "You're the one who constantly interferes in my conversations." "Why can't we just be polite and keep our distance?" I said. Then he turned to Charisse and said, "How about we take a little walk and talk privately?" I didn't want to get anywhere with Charisse today, but I wanted to get away from Catherine and piss her off at the same time. I still wanted to talk to Elise, but I thought I would do it when Catherine couldn't interfere. We are with Cherry. We talked a little and parted, promising to talk again. About 2 hours into the party, I had the chance to introduce myself to Elise. "So, you are the infamous Kurt?" she said with slight contempt in her voice. "I don't know what you heard, but yes, I'm Kevin's father, Kurt. Kevin seems like a great young man. I hope he doesn't hurt my Amber. I assure you, he is an excellent young man. He knows what he wants and works hard for it." And he said proudly, "He will continue to build his business to become successful, and he will also care and love Amber." "Well, I hope he can stay faithful," she said, not afraid to say what she was thinking or who she might offend. "I assure you he is faithful. You have nothing to worry about. I hope so for Amber's sake." Then she said, "I hope you know that this will be a church wedding." "Yes, that will be great. Promises made in front of God and all their family and friends," I said. "Look, I think we need to clear things up. Obviously, you've been told things about me that may or may not be true. I would like to give you a chance to ask any questions you may have. I promise you will find out the truth. I hope you will allow me to defend myself and perhaps ask you a few questions." "Don't know. I heard so much," she said. "Look, we are going to become relatives. We should be able to at least talk to each other," I urged. "I think so," she resigned herself. "I think it might take a little time, and this is probably not the best place for it. Can we hang out after the party? Maybe have dinner? Here he is, a clever fellow, trying to use his charms to lull my vigilance, to be alone with me," she accused. "Okay, you choose the time and place, and I'll adjust my schedule to whatever you choose," I said. "Well, I live about an hour away, so if you're really interested in diffusing the situation, you might want to make the effort. Tomorrow is Sunday and I'm going to church in the morning. Let's pick me up after church and we'll go to Cracker Barrel." She told me the name and address of her church and the closing time of the service. I told her I would meet her there. For the rest of the party, we maintained subtle eye contact. I think I was a mystery to her. In her eyes, I was someone to be avoided, but I showed myself to be a person who was an open book. Later, when the party was ending, Catherine came up to me. "Amber is sweet, of course, but I'm worried about how fast they're moving. Did you know they are planning to get married within a year? They will date and marry within 18 months. How well during this time can they get to know each other?" "Catherine, Kevin is a smart guy. He knows what he wants and gets it. Dating and getting married so soon may create some problems, but look at us. We knew each other for years before we got married and ended up getting divorced anyway. What determines whether they stay together is commitment. I think they are both very loyal to each other." She looked at me regretfully. She knew she had abandoned her commitment to our marriage. I felt good when I left. Yes, even years later, it still hurt, and I needed her to remember that. On Sunday morning, I woke up early, shaved, showered, changed into a nice suit, and made the hour-long drive to Alice Church. I arrived about half an hour before the service started and found a pew about a third of the way from the back of the church. Sitting there, I looked around. The sanctuary looked completely different from what I was used to. I grew up in the Catholic Church, and everything was in the old style. Stained glass, altar, candles, bells, communion table, crucifix and ladle. Here I saw none of this. Indeed, there was. Not even a pulpit from which the priest could preach. There was only a raised platform at the front of the church, with an empty cross on the wall behind it. To say I felt a little out of place would be an understatement. However, I was determined to see it through to the end. As people began to enter the sanctuary, they talked to each other and continued the typical conversations about things to do. They were carrying cups of coffee from Starbucks or one of the other coffee shops in the area. They also wore jeans and golf shirts or casual blouses. I felt overdressed. Most people came up to me and greeted me. They didn't mention my suit or make me feel out of place. I looked around for Elise, wondering if she had given me the wrong information or if she was sick and wouldn't come today. Then there was some activity up front, and the minister announced that the worship team was beginning the service. Then I saw her. She was singing with the worship team. During the third song, she noticed me sitting there. I can't believe she didn't notice me earlier. I'm sure I stood out in my suit while everyone else was wearing nice casual clothes. She smiled at me as she sang. She had a great voice. When she finished, she came and sat next to me. I appreciated this as I wasn't sure what to do or when. "I didn't expect you to come to the service," she said. "I feel a little out of place, probably overdressed for such an occasion." "It's okay, but if you feel more comfortable, you can take off your jacket." I followed her suggestion and placed it next to me on the bench. "Thank you for sitting next to me," I said. "You are my guest, of course. I would sit with you." "Well, thanks anyway," I said. The service was completely different from what I was used to, but it was nice, more relaxed. After the service, Elise introduced me to the priest and many other people, saying, "This is Amber's future father-in-law." At Cracker Barrel, we started with some light conversation. Then, as we were finishing our meal, she began to speak seriously. "So, Kurt, I was told that you are a womanizer and, frankly, sleep with women a lot. What can you say in your defense?" "Well, first of all, what is your definition of a womanizer?" I asked. "A guy who runs after women, trying to get under their skirts, and when he gets what he wants, he leaves them," she explained. "Well, if that's your definition, then I have to say that I'm definitely not a womanizer." "So, what they told me is a lie?" she accused. "Let me tell you about myself and how I became who I am at this stage of my life." "Okay, spit it out. I'm listening," she said. "I was married to Catherine. You met her yesterday. We were married for over 20 years and together for over 25 years. Somewhere in the last year of this marriage, she started cheating on me with her boss. When I found out about this, I followed her, and she went to the motel with him. Before this, for several months, she treated me badly. When I told her everything I knew, she lost her temper and tried to kill me by setting my garage on fire while I was in it. I filed for divorce and received a restraining order. After the divorce, I started dating. This next information may be too much for you, but I must explain myself. The women are talking, and I believe Catherine has been talking about my abilities in the bedroom too. Some of these women wanted to find out if it was true. I didn't run after them, but simply agreed when they approached me. These women told other women, and over the past 2 years or so, I have never turned down a single woman who asked me out. I enjoyed their company, and if I could give them any pleasure, then I did it. Please don't think badly of me. I just saw no reason to disappoint any woman, no matter her size, shape, or color. Every woman is special in her own way, and I made them feel like they were. If you think this is wrong, then I'm very sorry." She looked at me with a slight hint of suspicion in her eyes and then asked, "Well, where is my place?" "Elise, you are a beautiful woman. You know it. From what I've been told, you suffered just as much as I did. I chose communication, and I heard that you closed yourself off from all men because of what your husband did. I would like to know if there is a woman out there who could meet me and possibly date me. Whether you think so or not, I am a single man. I would like to find that one woman who will be a monogamist, the one with whom I can exclusively share the rest of my life. What about your ex-wife? Didn't she want to get back together with you? How about forgive and forget? You know as well as I do that, although it is possible to forgive, which, frankly speaking, I did not do, it is impossible to forget. You can't just forget what they did to you. You lose trust in them. You will always wonder where they are and with whom. This is no way to build relationships. No trust, no relationship, I said. I understand, she said. My ex wanted me to just turn a blind eye to this and continue to live, remaining married as before. I couldn't do this, neither for his sake nor for my own. My self-esteem took a huge hit. I didn't want to let any man hurt me like that again, and I still don't. We are very similar in that respect, I said, except that, although I continued to spend time with the opposite sex, I never allowed them to get close to me, in any real sense, or where it mattered. She looked at me and nodded slightly. Then she said, repeating what she had said before, "So where am I?" "Well, obviously we both have trust issues. I think I'd like to go on a date with you and get to know each other better, see if there's something there that we could build a future on." "What about all the other women?" she asked. "If after we spend some time together and we both feel there is potential, then I would be happy to become exclusive with you." "Let me, from the very beginning, be frank and honest with you," she said. "I won't have sex with anyone until I get married." "If we meet, you must understand this." I chuckled. Elise, I dated Catherine at school and after, until we got married. We were both still virgins when we got married. Sure, we fooled around a lot, we were horny teenagers, but she told me early on in our relationship that she would be a virgin on her wedding night, and we stuck to that. So what you stated does not bother or concern me. I will be waiting for you. I think this calmed her down because she said, "Kurt, I appreciate your honesty. And to tell you the truth, I think I like you. Let's see where this takes us." So 4 months passed and we met at least twice a week. Sometimes she came to me, and the rest of the time, I came to her. During those 4 months, I was still seeing other women, but their attraction was waning. Charisse, the woman from the engagement party, really tried to woo me after we dated a few times. She wanted more than I was willing to give. She, like everyone else, said, "I like how you do it." I could hear it in her voice. She was comparing me to others. It used to feed my ego. Now it was starting to bother me. When Elise told me over dinner one night at home that she was ready to make a commitment to me, I beamed with joy. "That makes me the happiest man on earth," I said. "From now on, I will devote myself only to you. Honestly, the last 4 months have been meaningless when I wasn't with you. I know this may scare you, but I love you." Most people would probably blame me for saying this so early in our relationship, but between dates, numerous long phone conversations, and my recent experiences with women, I've learned one thing. Women want to hear what you're saying. You think. She hesitated. "I think I'm falling in love with you too. Please be patient with me." I was patient both emotionally and physically, but it was worth it, and it gave us time to really get to know each other. One day, when I was in an extremely good mood, Catherine called me. "Hi, Kurt," she said. "Well, hello, Catherine. How are you today, and how can I help you?" "Wow, you're in a good mood." "Why not? So what do you need?" I said cheerfully. "Couldn't we sit down for dinner sometime?" "I have something I'd like to discuss with you," she asked. "Of course. How about tonight?" "It would be great. I can cook your favorite roast beef with vegetables. Can you come around 7 o'clock? "Don't you want to go eat?" I asked, not wanting her to spend so much time preparing dinner. "No, I would like to have privacy, so I think it will be better," she said. I hesitated. "Okay, see you then. Can I bring anything?" "Sure, maybe a little wine, something to go with the roast beef." Okay, I'll pick something up. See you tonight?" I hung up, wondering what she wanted. We talked a few times, but mostly it was just informational conversations. I was curious, but I didn't dare find out what it was. In the interest of full disclosure, I called Elise and told her. She answered, "Probably something related to the wedding. It's next month, after all." "She must be up to something big if she's trying to soften me up with roast beef," I said. "Call me later tonight and let me know what she wanted," she said. "I'll call." At 7 o'clock, I stood in front of Catherine's door. I had butterflies in my stomach. I was so afraid of what she wanted to talk to me about. She invited me in, and we chatted most of the dinner. Then she told me the real reason why she invited me to her place. "Kurt, Kevin's wedding got me thinking." "About what?" "About our wedding, About us, she said quietly. We are not here, Catherine. She pretended I didn't say that. Do you remember how we met? How we fooled around, and even if we didn't have sex, we had fun. Yes, I remember that. We were young and excited, I said. We were good then, weren't we? Yes, they were, I said honestly. What happened to us, Kurt? She asked. Life, probably. I talked about you at work with Shannon. About? I said. Yes. I know she has a steady boyfriend now, but when she talks about you, she smiles and says that you were exactly what she needed at that time. Then I talked to Bethany, and she said you're no longer making the rounds, as she put it. I have to think that maybe you're tired of playing around. Okay? I said. Apparently, neither Kevin nor Amber told Catherine that I was dating her mother. I smiled, thinking, I appreciate their privacy. Catherine took this smile as agreement with her. So what do you say if we try again? You know we had a good time together. Then she said quietly, before I ruin everything. Catherine, we had a good time together. The main word in this sentence is was. Over the past few months, I have realized that I need to forgive you. When I said that, a huge smile appeared on her face. Then he continued, I forgive you, but I can never forget what you did. You need to move on. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Oh, Kurt, I'm so sorry I did this to you, to us, really. I know we can get through this. Let's try again. She wasn't going to give up that easily. I almost didn't want to do this, but I had to let her know that this would never happen. I love someone else. Catherine, according to you, Bethany told you that I don't make the rounds anymore, and that's true. You also said that you think I'm tired of playing around, and that's also true, but you both don't know why. Catherine, I'm in love with someone else, and I no longer play around the bush because I am devoted to someone. I became a monogamist again. She just looked at me. I couldn't understand what she was thinking. Then she asked, Who is this? Elise, Amber's mother. Her shoulders slumped. I think she knew there was no way she could get me back, even with all our history. She knew that deep down I was a one-woman man, and that she was no longer that woman. We ate the rest of our food in silence. When I finished, I said, Catherine, thank you for this dinner and for the memories. I know this evening didn't turn out the way you wanted, but I know you will find someone. When you find him, love him with all your soul and devote yourself only to him. I just couldn't be mad at her anymore. I forgave her, mainly because Elise worked on me to do so. She also forgave her ex. We came to the realization that we needed to forgive them because their actions ultimately brought us together. As I drove away from Catherine's apartment, I called Elise. So, what was that? She asked. She wanted us to get back together. I thought so. She knows what she lost. Yes, and I know what I found, and I became better at it. Elise, I love you, and thanks to you, I have become a better person. I love you too, Kurt McCarthy, she said. This was the first time she said it out loud. I already knew that she expresses her love in many ways, but it was nice to finally hear it. Kevin and Amber got married, and Elise and I were smiling, holding hands and dancing the whole time. Several people even jokingly said that we looked like a wedding couple. Of course, Catherine was there, but she didn't stay long. Seeing us so in love was probably too much for her. 3 months later, we became a wedding couple, a small private event held at our church. All our friends and family were there except Catherine. She said she had a scheduling conflict. I think she just couldn't handle the idea that I had actually moved on. It took her several years, but she also found someone. I hope this lasts for a long time. Oh, and one more thing. On our wedding night, Elise said that magic phrase, I like how you do it. However, the difference was that the emphasis was on the word like. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.